latest Buzzkills, we have an awesome special audio and video episode called Operation Save Abortion, Ballot Initiative Edition. If you are fans of the pod, you know that Abortion Access Front has a series called Operation Save Abortion that is it's a bunch of different training videos to help you get activated in all the ways you can to protect reproductive health, rights, and justice. You can go to operationsaveabortion.com and see all of our previous ones. But today, we really wanted to drill down and get all of you activated when it comes to ballot initiatives. And so in this particular episode, we're going to do just that. Moj.
That's right. We wanted to dedicate an entire episode to full-on activism that motivates all of our Buzzkill listeners, wherever you live, to jump in and help get these crucial abortion ballot initiatives passed.
That's right. And we're going to be talking to an incredible panel of organizers who will share their processes of getting ballot initiatives passed and on the ballots in their states, the challenges they may have faced, why they're important, and how you, and we can't say this enough, can join in and help get them passed in these final weeks before the election, wherever you live.
So we have 2 states with active ballot initiatives represented in these conversations, but there are 10 around the country, and during our convo, we'll touch on all of them so you can learn as much as possible. We also have available activist toolkits for all the states so you can have a guide to help you choose your own activist adventure and get to work.
That's right. And the toolkits are available in our show notes, and the video version and toolkits are also available on YouTube or at operationsaveabortion.com.
All right, so let's just quickly give you an overview of ballot initiatives in general. So ballot initiatives are a way for voters to weigh in directly on the legislative process. 26 states allow citizen-led initiatives. 49 states require voter approval to change the Constitution. And Delaware is just doing its own thing, not needing any voter approval to change their Constitution.
Do you have to incorporate before you can change the Constitution?
Even know, probably.
That's their thing. Just incorporate in Delaware. So with the news media being news media-y, as we say, news media gonna news media, you know, they often talk of ballot initiatives as though they are the sort of like be all end all, the way to save abortion access. And while they are radically important to help states secure access, we all know that access isn't access until everybody has it. And ballot initiatives can be tricky. They still have some barriers. You know, sometimes you can get what you think you can get passed, but maybe young people trying to access care might still need a parental consent, or there may be gestational limits or all this kind of stuff. And hostile states, as Moji said, there's only 26 states that allow citizen-led initiatives. And that means that almost half of the United States, a legislature would say, well, we'll do a ballot initiative, but if you have a garbage legislature, you're never going to get, you know, anything like this on your ballot, right? And so also just like, it feels like we need to say it over and over again, but your zip code, your area code just shouldn't determine whether or not you can have access to abortion care. So with that, Moj, you want to introduce our fine guests?
I'm so excited to introduce our guests. They're here to help us understand and to explain what is going on. So yeah, we have 3 amazing campaign experts joining us today. We have Chris Love with Arizona for Abortion Access, Kellie Copeland with Ohio's Abortion Forward, and Karen Middleton with Colorado's Cobalt Advocates.
That's right. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick off the question to one person, and then we're going to invite all of the panelists to add their wisdom because everybody's going to have experience in all of these questions that we have. So Chris, I'm going to kick it off with you. There's a lot of angry people out there that would love to bring a ballot campaign to their state. So I would love to know, in Arizona, talk about the steps you took to make it happen and sort of the vibes and the momentum that you felt like this is the time now, and how you organized so many volunteers to make it happen.
Liz, thank you for having me here to talk about the Yes on Prop 139 campaign supporting the Arizona Abortion Access Act. I can tell you that, we began originally right after the Dobbs decision was handed down here in Arizona. Obviously, Roe versus Wade was overturned by the Dobbs decision, and in Arizona had a lot of chaos and confusion. Prior to the Dobbs decision, the Arizona's anti-repro governor, Doug Ducey, signed a 15-week abortion ban into law. However, in our state, our laws don't go into effect. We have a general effective date of 90 days after our legislative session ends. So that law was passed, but it wasn't in effect. We no longer had Roe versus Wade, but we also had an old law from 1864 on our books here in Arizona, and it had been enjoined because of Roe, right? So our attorney general at the time was running for the Senate, and in his infinite non-wisdom, he decided that he was going to throw red meat at his base. And then, asked the court to basically lift the injunction on the 1864 ban. So Arizona was in a state of chaos and confusion, and we all know that that's the point, right? We know that it had a chilling effect on everyone from providers to folks that were seeking abortion care in our state. So, there was another effort that had started in 2022 about 6 weeks before the Dobbs decision came down. That meant that they had essentially 8 weeks to collect the 400,000 signatures that they needed to pass a ballot initiative in the state. We did not join that because there was just not enough time, and they weren't successful in getting on the ballot. But we knew that 2024 was an option for us. So right around November 2020, to when we were having our elections here, we got the process started, and I sat down with the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Arizona at the time, and she was new to the state and said, "Chris, I need your help." At which point I was supposedly in my ex officio year at Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona. So I was supposed to be sunsetting my service and ended up running a ballot campaign.
It's always the way. Patriarchy does not take a holiday. This is what I think we need tattooed across our foreheads.
Right. I never got to be a lady who lunched during my time. So we got right to work. I identified a small group of, repro advocates in our state from some of our most exciting repro organizations. We all got together. We hired an attorney. We hired a consultant who went around and talked to all of the repro stakeholders in our state and asked them what they wanted to see on the ballot and how they could help. Then I assembled the wonder team of attorneys. I'm an attorney by day myself. And so we all got together and crafted language. We decided on moving forward a constitutional amendment here in the state. And so we got together, put together a very Arizona ballot initiative. And then started shopping it around to all of the folks in our legislature, our ACOG organization, everyone who wanted to hear about it, our J organizations. And then we launched our campaign in September of 2023. We needed about 400,000 signatures to get on the ballot. I can tell you that while this was going on, while we were collecting signatures, our Supreme Court decided to uphold the ban from 1864, which was a total ban on abortion with criminal penalties for providers.
Chris, that must have had to have been a giant catalyst, right? When women are like, "Are you telling me that you're dragging us back 2 centuries?"
Yes, before, women could vote, when my ancestors were not free, it just made absolutely no sense. And so, I will say that I never wanted to see a day when that would happen as someone in the repro space. We always want folks to have access to all of the care that they need, including and especially abortion care. But I will tell you that at that moment, anyone who was sitting on the fence or sitting on the sidelines jumped right into the game, right? So we were able to, obviously in the background, our legislature also was doing a thing to repeal that 1864 ban. And I can tell you that they had to peel a couple of, anti-repro folks that were ours, right? And they probably wouldn't have been able to do that if they hadn't seen kind of the popularity and force of our ballot initiative.
Yeah.
So able to repeal the 1864 law, thanks to, efforts from, the repro folks in our legislature, our pro-repro governor, our pro-repro AG. And then on the cusp of that, we were able to submit more than double the amount of signatures that were required. We submitted 823,685 signatures. They came from all 15 of our counties from across the state. We had more than 7,000 volunteers who helped us collect those signatures. And, obviously we withstood all of the legal challenges that came, especially in Arizona, where they love to do line by line signature challenges. We submitted so many signatures that the opposition was like, never mind.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. That is incredible. And I wanted to just touch with Karen and Kellie to say, in the process of getting the Ohio ballot initiative on the ballot, and for you working now, did you guys have a touchstone where you're like, you watched a surge because of information that people learned, or was there a moment where either of you saw something that had happened that really got people motivated?
I mean, in Ohio, we had the 6-week ban go into effect for 82 days. And people were having to, if they were able, to flee Ohio for care, including parents trying to get their kids out for care. And I think that really galvanized Ohioans, the suffering that everyone saw, the people not being able to get miscarriage management, hospitals not treating them, people not being able to get care. That happened in the fall, well, right after Dobbs. It went into effect that same day and for 82 days. And I think that was the big catalyst. I mean, the work to amend our Constitution was going to happen, but I think that was such a galvanizing force in Ohio. And, even well into 2023, when we were doing focus groups and things like that, we wouldn't bring that up, some of the things that happened, like the 10-year-old who, people all over the country heard about, but Ohioans were bringing that up. That was just so seared on the hearts of Ohioans. They were so offended that people couldn't get access to care. I think that really galvanized people to be behind this campaign. And, we had nearly 1 million people involved in this campaign, whether it was the 700,000 people who signed petition signatures, the people helped gather those signatures, the people who walked door to door, phone bank, donated. When you think about a state like Ohio, nearly 1 million people being involved, that's just incredible. When you have that kind of support, it's not easy to win, but it makes it a part of the community. And I think that that's one of the things that have been really transformational about pushing back on abortion stigma. There was a lot of stigma thrown during the campaign, but I think having that community and that momentum to build on, we're really working to tear that down as well.
And I want to remind our listeners that Ohio is one of the first successful campaigns that we had post-Dobbs. I remember us cheering on Ohio last year. Can you also talk a little bit about some of the misinformation that happened in Ohio while you were trying to pass your amendment?
Yeah, they started with the usual abortion stigma stuff, talking about, telling lies about, abortion later in pregnancy and just all of the usual stuff. And then they tried we have a governor who's just been on the forefront of anti-abortion policy forever, Mike DeWine. And they trotted him out and kind of pretended like, oh, shucks, grandpa cares about you. The state's going to have all this support for people who have unintended pregnancies. And we were like, excuse me, what have you been waiting for? Like, you've literally been running the state. Republicans, because of gerrymandering, have had complete domination of state government. And now all of a sudden they were going to do that. So that didn't work. But I think the big thing, when they realized how popular abortion access is, they tried to have the fight on a different ground. They couldn't fight on the ground that we were fighting on, which is like, we have to have abortion access. This is essential to our lives, to our future, to our well-being. They couldn't fight us there. So they tried to take us to the parental rights. They even called their campaign Protect Women Ohio. Their yard signs were like, protect children, just all of this nasty kind of stuff. And then they also added in the tax on the trans community, saying that, this was an actual ad from a campaign, because I went back and watched it to prepare for this. They actually said that it would allow your 11-year-old to go get sex reassignment surgery without a parent being involved. And I was like, where did critical thinking go? Where the hell is this 11-year-old going to get that money? Like, what are you even?
Oh, yeah, or a doctor that would do it, right?
Right.
That also happened in a lot of legislative stuff, right? It happened
Yep.
in Nebraska, like there's many states where when they realized that abortion was popular, because that smacked everybody, they were like, how do we freak people out? Well, Moms for Liberty and everybody else
Yep.
got together and they were like, oh, let's act like we've seen it now, where we've seen people who are speaking and saying they're doing it in school.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so the fear of all of the trans panic is really just gross and just piles onto the oppression in a way that just feels really disgusting.
Well, and I will give people some hope, though. CNN did some exit polls here. And even with all of that stigmatizing, things about parental rights and minors and trans kids, we won married men with kids, or just men with kids, by 53%. Women with children, we won by 62%. It didn't work. People didn't buy it.
Right. Karen, did you experience that also? Like because you've been doing this for a hot minute, and like I remember working with y'all in Colorado when they were trying to, they wanted the amendment to stop abortion after 20 weeks. And so tell me about some of the stuff you've been through also.
I think we're a little bit different, right? Because we have had abortion access and we have not had gestational limits since 1967, fingers crossed. But we had seen abortion on the ballot so many times that the motivation for people in our state was just to get out and get this done because they're tired of seeing it. And I would say the motivation that we've seen is every time there's another story out of another state, it translated back to doing more work here. We did see, and we're still facing anti-trans efforts, and there were actually a number of ballot measures that were trying to get on the ballot around anti-trans issues, and we expect they're coming back. We're campaigning alongside Amendment J, which is freedom to marry, because we have hate-filled ban on same-sex marriage in our state law. And we are state constitution, and we're working to get that undone right now. So we see those common threads. And then the opposition right now, and I've actually told people to go back and look at the Ohio attack ads. They're saying that we're sneaking in, overturning parental notification. They're bringing out abortion later in pregnancy, and they are saying that this just simply isn't necessary. So we're combating that a lot right now. And we're seeing, in fact, there was another article today, but honestly, our opposition is, as usual, pretty disorganized, and they're perhaps focused on some of the other states because they're really, I feel like they've got the B team out this year. So
Colorado has such expansive abortion rights right now. Can you actually talk about or walk us through what the impact of passing this amendment will have for the people in your state?
absolutely. Yes, we have statutory protections with the Reproductive Health Equity Act that we passed. We actually got it signed into law a month before the Dobbs leak in 2022. But up until that, we've always had this laissez-faire, no restrictions and no protections. So we were at the whim of the legislature. And we were also seeing year in and year out attacks on creating personhood, on banning abortion after 22 weeks, et cetera. So what we found is unless we create the right in the Constitution, we were going to continue to see those attacks time and time again. And we also have other ballot measures that could change control of the governor's office as soon as 2 years from now. And so they could have a governor that would overturn abortion rights in the state. So we really felt like we had to create the right for real. And then we have had a state funding ban since 1984. It went into the Constitution by less than 1%. But if we play our cards right at the national level and we can overturn Hyde, this state funding ban would still be in place. So we needed to tackle both things at the same time. We actually worked with a plain language expert. I think he came out of Arizona. So we have created the right and we're expanding the access. We also have, so not only if you're on public insurance, but anyone who is a state employee. I was a state employee. I had Kaiser when I was a legislator. I had a baby. If I had needed an abortion, even though Kaiser covers abortion for all of its customers, we couldn't get an abortion paid for because we were state employees. And that lack of fairness has really resonated with voters. So that's why we're really seeing that it's important. We also have we're one of 7 states with without gestational limits. So we are still the place that many folks are coming when they are turned away in other places. And what we're seeing is a real uptick in people who are moving here who can provide the abortion care that we need.
And I think it's important, just hearing all of you talk about the way that they have thrown language around and said so much bullshit. I think it's really important to just reiterate now and again and forever that as we look at how we see leadership talking in these election cycles, and every time you hear the phrase minimum federal or minimum national standard, they're trying to say they don't want a federal abortion ban, and that is a federal abortion ban. And so use that, tell people, throw that knowledge around, but they try to dance around with this language all the time to create this incredible amount of harm. And it's really hard. And so one of the things I wanted to ask all of you, and I'll start with you, Chris, is can you tell me an unexpected obstacle or a great joy or both that you've experienced in this process? Something maybe if it was an obstacle, something you might do different to change up your strategy, or something you would definitely recommend anybody to do if they decide to take on this process.
Right. Well, I think, we're going to have all of the obstacles that every other state has had, right? Because the opposition never learns its lesson. And it seems like they don't get much smarter. So they're trying the same things in Arizona, right? With, I don't think that they have the room to go for trans panic stuff because we are simply dealing with the right for abortion here, but they have gone parental consent. I get a lot of, well, does this allow abortion at 40 weeks? And I have to say there's no such thing, right? And so, those things are not surprising. But I think that, the great joy that I've seen is actually, I'll give it to my friends in Ohio. The win in Ohio was happening at the same time as we were going through our process. And y'all were like the wind beneath our wings, quite frankly, because we saw what was possible. We also were looking at a legislature that was trying to increase the threshold for ballot initiative votes, right? And so I think that once folks saw what happened with Ohio and how everyone came out and defeated that, and then, passed the measure that they were putting forth, that really sent a signal to, especially the folks in our legislature, that it was probably not going to work out for them. And so I think that, one of the greatest joys that we've had is seeing how, Ohio has really impacted the way that the folks in our government, the anti-abortion folks in our government, as well as our opposition, have really reacted to what we're doing. They're doing what they can, but they're just throwing stuff at the wall at this point. I think that, we're a successful campaign. People agree with us, and, they've had, they're trying, but they can't do anything about it. They can't stop our momentum.
And one of the things I wanted to ask all of you is, and I know it's different how these things play out in every state, but if your initiative passes, it's not and it's a law. There's a process that happens after that is legislative. Can each of you talk about what that looks like in your states? So that, because I think people think, yay, we won, but then there's a bunch of stuff you have to do after. I'll start with you, Kellie.
Yeah, I think that's what we're dealing with right now. Sadly, passing a constitutional amendment does not automatically strip the over 30 restrictions on abortion access that passed since 2011. So we're having to challenge those in court. There are only two ways to go after it: legislatively, which we're in one of the most severely gerrymandered states, so that isn't a path at the moment, or through the courts. But in the courts, we eventually end up at an elected Supreme Court that currently has an anti-abortion majority. So one of the things that we're doing now is trying to make sure that the people who sit on the court will actually enforce the amendment and not ignore the amendment. And this kind of goes to the joy that you were talking about. We have injunctions, not just against the 6-week ban, but also against the 24-hour 2-visit requirement waiting period, which that has been one of the most devastating barriers to abortion access, because people have to travel twice. They have to get childcare twice. They have to, sometimes pay for accommodations, because Ohio's a very big state and not everyone lives close to a clinic. And we also have people coming from border states So, this is going to make and has been making abortion a bit more accessible, but it's all temporary unless we have what we need at the state Supreme Court. And we also have a measure on the ballot this year to end gerrymandering once and for all. If we're successful in that, then we'll have the opportunity for a legislative path as well. But one of the fun things that has been happening is during the campaign, our state attorney general, Dave Yost, he was saying all these things about, the amendment's going to do this and it's going to do that and it's going to strike all these things down. And he's the litigator for the state on all these cases I was talking about. And I think our litigators are having a grand time throwing all the things he said before in his face now, because now he's going, oh, no, the amendment doesn't do that. And it's like, roll the tape.
Don't you love going to the videotape? It is such a grand thing. Although I wish that they had a modicum of shame. It feels like our side has we really actually are trying to be good people with a conscience and doing the right thing. And when you have no shame, it is kind of astounding when you watch what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, talk a little bit about Colorado and what the process is there.
Sure. Well, we've been working on the implementation process behind the scenes for about a year. We're actually working with providers and readying them to be able to accept Medicaid. In the meantime, we have seen, for example, Denver Health, one of the largest safety net hospitals in the state, began providing abortion. And because they couldn't use any Medicaid dollars or federal dollars, they actually firewall a clinic that they use for providing abortion and billing it separately. So we're seeing good progress there. But to narrative about the AG, we have a wonderful Attorney General, Phil Weiser, who's helping us, but we also have a group of folks in Pueblo who are hanging out with Mark Lee Dixon.
Oh, we love him.
Yeah, I know. Well, and guess who they're bringing up repeatedly? Comstock.
Comstock. Oh,
Yes.
Also love him.
And Jonathan Mitchell, but they are actually doing a hearing this month to try to once again ban abortion at the local level, even though the statute says it isn't. And our friends at the Thomas More Society have just signed on that they're behind it. So even though we're doing all of these things and we've got the right folks in the right places, we are seeing that they are relentless, and we've got outsiders who come in and stir things up. So I thought you'd appreciate hearing that our friend Mark Lee Dixon, and they're running the same measure as they tried 2 years ago. We thought that they shouldn't be able to do that again, but they're doing it anyway. And when they received a letter from the Attorney General saying that he would take them to court, she said she didn't care. So that's the level of critical thinking that we're getting at the ground.
Mark Lee Dixon really loves, he's really resilient. I feel like his that shamelessness that we talked about, he kind of embodies that.
For those of you listening and watching who don't know who Mark Lee Dixon is, which could be quite a lot of you, we call him the Pied Viper of abortion. He is a Texas activist who has literally dropping his Johnny Appleseed bad ideas from in small city councils to small city councils, trying to create something called a sanctuary city for the unborn. And so basically going into these communities where like the median age is like 68, like they can't even afford that. Like they don't even have enough people to support like a diner, never mind abortion. But it's just this thing where he goes from town to town. Also, they're trying to create these laws where you can't take certain highways if they're passageways to access abortion. He started in Texas, but he's gone to Florida. Now we're hearing in Colorado, New Mexico. He's trying to get all over the place. So
he was in Ohio.
Oh, and he was in Ohio.
We whipped his ass here. Every little town he went to, that local activist.
Oh, that's right.
They're like, come on down. And we're like, sure thing. And local people in Ohio were like, get the hell out of here. Go home.
He literally looks like he looks like the Bilbo Baggins ugly troll cousin.
But he also, and I love this, you called him the Johnny Appleseed of anti-abortion. He is also proudly a 40-year-old virgin. So that's all he's dropping, just anti-abortion information and literally nothing else.
I know. I think we need to do a whole podcast on Mark Lee Dixon because we could talk about him forever. Just as like if they made an inflatable thing you could punch of his face, I would buy it and buy it for all my friends. So I didn't mean to derail. But Chris, talk about Arizona. And like what happens if let's talk in the positive in the future, when your initiative passes, then what needs to happen after that?
Well, first, I guess we got to look out for Mark Lee Dixon.
Just preemptively look out for him. That's a man to watch out for.
Yeah, so we're in the middle of, Ohio and Colorado here. Once we win, Arizona will still have 40 plus laws and restrictions on the books that our legislature has been passing since around 2009. And so we are also in an interesting position because we are primed to take over our legislature. We are about 2 seats in each chamber away from having a pro-repro majority.
That's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So we are watching and waiting to see what happens. And hopefully, if we take the majority, then we will have a pro-repro legislature, a pro-repro governor, a pro-repro AG, and a pro-repro secretary of state here in Arizona leading our government. So that opens the possibility of legislatively taking care of some of these 40 plus regulations that are barriers to access to Arizonans all over the state. If that doesn't happen, we will have to litigate some of those things away, right? And so we are all preparing, our individual organizations are preparing to bring those cases after the election in chief has happened. And so we're doing all of those things, but I keep on explaining to folks that this is just one electoral tool. It's a first tool. We are still going about the business of doing the culture shift that needs to happen around destigmatizing abortion, making sure that people understand that abortion is healthcare. And so those things are always happening in the background. But I think that, once we pass this amendment, we will have a stronger leg to stand on, a stronger foundation to make sure that we're bringing Arizonans along with us, right? And I want to be very clear that, our amendment does include viability language, which is something that, I personally had to struggle with because I come out of a repro justice lens, right? But I also live in the state of Arizona. And we are we are a swing state, but we are still very much a red state, right? And so what we are trying to do is make sure that we have the language that would bring the most Arizonans possible on our side. But I think that after this is done, we can go so much further.
And I also think too that that's the work that always continues and the work that we've seen actually make a difference, right? When right now we are living with viability in the majority of these ballot initiatives, and it's because we haven't been able to be the people who dominate the narrative. The stories of people who need abortion care at any part of their pregnancy. I often say to people who try to challenge me on that, I often say, well, let me tell you this. If you had a pregnancy and for some reason, that pregnancy started becoming either non-viable or was harming the person who was pregnant, at what point would you like to hand over the decision of whether you live or die or whether the fetus suffers to your government? At what point? If the answer is, well, obviously at no point, that's what we're talking about. And for them to frame it in these other ways is such a disservice to people who are literally just trying to live their lives in a healthy way. And the other chilling effect for me is that it frames people who need to have abortions later in their pregnancy as somehow monsters, right? And if you frame us as monsters and you frame us as incompetent, then that's a recipe to give the state complete control over who we are and how we live. And I feel like that's very scary. So
Yeah.
This has been really, really helpful. And I want to just, before we go, and we'll start with you, Karen, 2 things. Remind folks what you got going on in your ballot initiative and how folks can join in from wherever they are to help you get that passed. And then reminding our listeners, which I will remind you again, that we're going to have toolkits from both of these fine folks and also from all of the other initiatives. So you can, like Moji said earlier, choose your own adventure of how you want to be helpful and an advocate. So let's start with you, Karen. Tell people about the initiative and what people can do to help out.
Thank you so much. So Amendment 79 is creating the right to access abortion in Colorado in the Constitution and removing a barrier to how abortion is paid for so that the state will, regardless of where you work or who your employer is, public or private insurance, you will have access to abortion care covered by your insurance. To get involved, Coloradans for Protecting Reproductive Freedom or Google Amendment 79. We have a mobilize link that will give you opportunities to sign up to join us on phone banking between now and Election Day. And we would welcome any and all to join us in this fight. We're proud of the work and we're really excited to be closing in on the goal. Thank you.
All right, Chris, and then Kellie.
Sure. So the Arizona Abortion Access Act will enshrine the fundamental right to abortion in our Arizona state constitution up to fetal viability, at which point the government can't do any kind of regulation, which is great. After fetal viability, we are prioritizing the physical and mental health and the life of the pregnant person, right? And so this puts the decision-making squarely in the hands of the pregnant person, and they can consult with their physician or their medical provider and their families if they want to, but the government is out of that decision. And we believe that Arizonans across the state agree with us. If you would like to get involved, please go check us out at yesonprop139.org or ArizonaForAbortionAccess.org. We are having people from all over the country come out and help us. So you can phone bank with us. You can write postcards. We have folks that are coming out to knock doors for our field program for us. All are welcome. And, we will see y'all in November 5th after we have won this race.
That's amazing. And Kellie, I know you've had such success getting it passed. How can people help in Ohio to get some of these garbage laws off the books or anything else that you would need to be helpful of what Ohio activists are doing now?
Yeah, now it's all about implementation. So, we are working to make sure people understand what's at stake in this election, the role of the state Supreme Court. You can sign up to volunteer and get involved or make a donation at abortionforward.org. And we also have another issue 1 in Ohio that is being run by the Citizens Not Politicians campaign. And you can visit them at citizensnotpoliticians.org. And they have a measure that will, if it passes, and I think it will end gerrymandering in Ohio for good. And gerrymandering is the reason why 57% of Ohioans supported the Ohio Reproductive Freedom Amendment, but we've been being represented by a 2/3 anti-abortion majority. And we have the chance to fix that and really take back our state and create a community where everyone can get the access to abortion they need locally, without stigma, without judgment, without barriers. And you can be part of that work just today.
Gerrymandering is really the reason that I think throughout, abortion is so popular. We know that gerrymandering is why even these abortion bans stand as they are. So I'm super excited about that, Kellie.
I feel like we should create a character called Gerrymander and just put it out there in the world to be like a terrible, terrible monster who's just out there taking all the decisions out of your hands and putting them into these pocketed places.
You are the genius to do it. Please, please do it.
Gerrymander might have to exist. I know all of my team is like, please don't create more work.
Do it. Do it. They'll be fine.
Thanks to our guest, Chris Love with Arizona for Abortion Access, Kellie Copeland with Ohio's Abortion Forward, and Karen Middleton with Cobalt Advocates. So I'm just going to go around before we leave and have you all tell people, well, I guess you did say the best way to find you already, but maybe you have IG handles or something that you'd like to share before we end. Why don't we start with you, Chris?
So you can follow me on X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it these days.
We dead name it Twitter all the time. We don't
all the time. It's our standard.
Calling it X. So you can find me at Legally Love, and on Instagram you can find me at Ms. Chris Love.
Karen?
So I'm going to give you our Instagram for the campaign is CO4 Repro. And you can find me at Karen S. Middleton on all the channels. I'm trying to do Threads and not that other guy's tool.
Yeah.
And Kellie?
Well, you can find us at abortionforward.org on our website, and we have links to all of our socials. We're doing TikToks. My team is doing some really hilarious stuff about gerrymandering and the state Supreme Court. So definitely look us up there. And we're also on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram. I think we need to get over there on Threads, though. We need to expand. So come find us. We try to be funny. I mean, we'll never be as funny as Liz and their team, but we're trying to be junior funny people.
You guys are funny.
Well, maybe new gerrymander will join you guys on TikTok.
Yeah, see what I can do about gerrymander.
Again, all of this info will be on our show notes and at OperationSaveAbortion.com.
Well, that was so awesome. And I just want to say to all of you who took time, because I know you're in crunch time, all of us at Abortion Access Front and FBK, we just want to thank you for joining us. And we also want to thank all of the organizers, because everybody is working so hard. And some states like South Dakota, there's 2 people working on this, but they all assembled toolkits for all of you. And so I highly recommend, as I said, we're going to have the toolkits in our show notes, but also at OperationSaveAbortion.com. Please access the toolkits and see what you can do for each of the states. It's maybe you didn't consider South Dakota, maybe that's a place that you could be like, you know what, I'm going to help them out because they have a fighting chance and they need some help, but help everybody out if you can. And so I want to just thank you again for your time. And if you want to learn more about our Operation Save Abortion trainings, again, OperationSaveAbortion.com, and you can get active with all of the work at Abortion Access Front. Sign up to volunteer or donate at aafront.org. And if you want to stay up to date with all your reproductive health rights and justice news, follow us across all social platforms at AbortionAF.
Next week on the pod, don't miss Red Nesbitt from the Mariposa Fund and comedian and influencer Che Guerrero, creator of My Undocumented Ass, which you can find on Instagram and TikTok. They'll be here to talk about the issues surrounding undocumented folks accessing reproductive health care.
That's right. And if this is your first time listening to the Feminist Buzzkills podcast, we drop a new episode every Friday wherever you pod, so don't forget to subscribe and support. You can go to our Patreon and you'll get great content like this, and you can also get cool FBK merch and experiences. All pledges support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. You can pledge at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills. FBK is edited by Remy DeTournay and is produced by Abortion Access Front.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and for being the change you want to see in the world.
Now get to work. Let's fucking go.
Let's go.
Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. New episodes drop Friday. When BS is poppin', we pop off. And if you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.
Have you met All Modern? All Modern brings you the best of modern furniture and decor. And right now through November 20th, you'll score up to 50% off during their early access to Black Friday sale. Simplify your holiday entertaining with deals on plush sofas, modern tabletop essentials, and more. All on sale at All Modern. Then get them delivered for free in days. You heard that right. Days. That's modern made simple. Shop All Modern's early access to Black Friday sale now through November 20th at allmodern.com.